going. 20 days. 20 days. Oh, I cannot contain my excitement. Tell me you've bought a wonderful bottle of wine or champagne or whatever it is that you drink. I'm a girly drinker, so you'll probably think all of my options are terrible. So I have a jam-packed show for you tonight, and I'm hoping you enjoy it just as much as I love putting it together. This week came with a lot of ups and downs for the campaign trail. I think Scott Morrison is not as confident as he wants to be. But I think we'll get through knowing that there is a big media out there that's willing to back him even if he's not going to do so great. And I think that's become more apparent as this is going on. Whether or not the larger voting populace will see that that's what's happened here is yet to be seen. But I'm confident the win in South Australia and other parts of the country, I really think this is it, guys. I don't want to, promise something that, because last election I cried like a baby and it was terrible and there was no getting up out of bed for a couple of days. I still did things. It was just hard. So I'm hoping I'm not counting my chickens before they've actually hatched. Make sure you talk to everyone about voting and why you're voting the way you're voting. Actually, I normally don't combine my at-home job doing this with my other job. For this I did. It was just too big not to. And the risk was too high. So I kind of merged the two and I got a bit... I don't know, we'll see if people still call me back to rock up to do my other job. Could be a little bit cringy. Okay, so to start this week off, what happened this week? What I want to talk about is, hold on one sec. Thought I had this all lined up and now it's all out of order. Okay, so the AFP was caught doing something really disgusting to Brittany Higgins. I don't know if you've seen it, but I did, and I need to show you what they did. So, what if a government agency that is supposed to uphold your rights and your civil liberties in check? What happens if you're a victim in that moment? What happens if the perpetrator is someone that's powerful? Well, we're about to see exactly what happens when someone powerful harms someone not powerful, and exactly what kind of power they gained in doing that. To my knowledge, the Liberal Party haven't paid a penance for this. There was cleaners in before no ambulances ordered for this rape victim. There was no support services offered to her. And in fact, quite the opposite happened. There was a dirt file given and so much more. What they did to her is beyond deplorable. But to really capture the essence of what they did to her, you go to the police and something has happened to you. You're seeing them at your worst hour in your whole life. This will be the worst moment that you will remember for the rest of your life. Do you know what this young lady remembers? She remembers being raped. And then after she was raped, she was told, oh no, we're not going to help you from anyone. including the AFP. So, okay, what did they do? Protected evidence in the case of man charged with the sexual assault of Brittany Higgins, including counselling notes and video recordings, was unlawfully disclosed to the defence by the Australian Federal Police. That's right. They took what was this woman's moment to restore her life in terms of counselling and video recordings, and they showed her perpetrator. So she doesn't get the feeling of seeing this man and saying, no, I'm doing way better now. He then gets to revel in what he did. I'd imagine that there's no shame, otherwise you wouldn't do it. He raped her. Like, there's no way this will ever be okay. There isn't a land on planet Earth where this is acceptable. They didn't just let go of her counselling notes and videos and showed them to the man that raped her, but we're talking about the AFP, the very people that are supposed to guide you as a victim of a crime and say, hey, you were a victim, let's see how we can support you. That's not what they did here. And no, this isn't like a normal bungling thing they do. By and large, police in this country have a bit of a checkered history for me. And suppose for a few people, sometimes they're wonderful, and it depends on the police that you're interacting with. Me personally, I've had a hit and miss scenarios where they've rocked up to something that's happened and they've been wonderful and stepped in and done what they needed to do. Then there's the other times where when you're very small and they don't handle children so well. And you want to think that this is her moment where she needed protecting. The AFP should have had her best interests at heart, not her perpetrators. The revelation is the latest twist in what has already become complex and contentious court case after the defence moved earlier last month to have the trial delayed indefinitely, or failing that temporarily due to an adverse publicity. A decision on the application by the Chief Justice of the ACT Supreme Court, the Chief Justice Lucy McCallum, has been expected for some weeks. The trial of the accused man is set down for June. Ms. Higgins filed a formal complaint with the AFP last week. Now, that there says no matter which, this is going to hinge how this election goes on what happens there. Because a government that gives a damn about victims is going to make sure that she receives the correct treatment here. This was politically driven to go this way. There is no talking me out of it now. I think to downplay what they did to this woman is abhorrent to me. You just can't. And I think at every turn with the dirt file that they did on Brittany, with the whole just don't say anything, you know, having the carpet cleaners in before they even helped her, the whole thing is deplorable. And this wasn't just one man that violated her. One man may have committed that crime, but there was crimes committed after that. Tampering with evidence is one. Linda Reynolds. That's a very serious thing that you did. You called in carpet cleaners before that could have been fixed. That's tampering with evidence. How they're not charged with that, I don't know. Ms. Higgins says in a complaint that the ACT Director of Public Prosecutions, the DPP, Shane Drumgold, had made her aware that the AFP unlawfully disclosed the protected material to the Defence Counsel, given as the evidence including 2 years of confidential counselling notes and video recordings of evidence-in-chief interviews. Okay, since the date, the DPP ACT has been in regular contact with various members of the AFP to ascertain the breach and how it occurred, under whose authority the complaint continues. So this isn't if it happened, as the ABC News article infers. No, this actually happened. This is something that really happened to this woman. Her confidential notes of 2 years of counselling was handed over without even a shred of dignity or thought of what would happen to this victim, right on to her perpetrator. No, so close to what this is leading up to, political interference. How doesn't the Liberal Party feel any shame for this? There must be like some internal shame that they mess around in this stuff, that they called a carpet cleaner before they did the police. They didn't even do any of the correct things that you're supposed to do. I don't know. This has yet to yield any satisfactory result and had significant impact on the personal well-being. A summary of the email of communications with the AFP provided to Ms. Higgins by the DPP and seen by the ABC reveals increasingly unhappy Mr. Drumgold, expressing frustration with the police for their tardiness. Wow. In trying to clarify, the defence had not accessed the material and then had it been unlawfully handed over and enacting to them to have it returned. They weren't even going to tell them. I have a message for the AFP. If that's acceptable to you, my God, you got to up your standard. Look, this is a politically driven incident. Ms. Higgins says that her complaint said that she'd been advised that I have grounds to make a complaint under the Evidence Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1991, given the sexual assault counselling notes are protected under the Act, subject to immunity, requiring leave to be disclosed. Her complaint says that while the accused is entitled to a copy of the transcript, the accused can only have access to the audio recording and only after specifically applying for it under the Act. In addition to the unlawful disclosure of the protected evidence, the ACT Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Drumgold, also revealed to Ms. Higgins that the police had directly handed over the brief of the Defence Counsel, bypassing the requirement that it handed over by the DPP. Information provided to Ms. Higgins by Mr. Drumgold documents the chain of events and the emails involved in the handling of the brief of evidence by the AFP, which first advised the DPP that the brief of evidence had been served in the defence of August 6 last year. The DPP wrote in the police seeking confirmation on what exactly had been served, seeking confirmation of the list of sensitive material, including counselling notes and evidence. In chief video had not been served. When the police subsequently confirmed that the sensitive non-disclosable material had been indeed handed. See, that's, when you look at the headline, right, they're like, she claims it. She claims it. No. The DPP is with her on this. She's not ascertaining anything. The DPP is clearly making it known. No. This happened. Expressing deep concerns at outlining the requirement for the immediate remedial action and retrieve and destroy the brief of evidence and seeking statements from the relevant people outlining why and how the brief served directly to the defence. The AFP subsequently wrote on the defence requiring them to delete the brief. The DPP then served a copy of the brief on the defence without the offending material. The DPP contacted the accused lawyer, Warwick Corn, directly to confirm that he had acted on the email from the AFP and was told by Mr. Corn that he had not accessed the material, but did not know how to delete it. Mr. Corn subsequently emailed the AFP early in October, confirming in terms of the USB stick that you served on me at the time of service of the court attendance notice. I've not viewed, downloaded, or printed any of the material contained in the USB stick. Let's see if he's honest. We'll see when this goes to trial how honest he's been. Why? Because there is a thing called gaining of evidence, both when they question about what happened. This honestly could put the defence lawyer in a real dodgy position of ineffective counsel, because now he could possibly become a star witness in this trial. And the AFP handling this case. This has, by all intensive purposes, turned this into more of a wilder show than what it should have been. Okay, the reason for this, the USB, I opened the stick and simply saw the name, folders and the items listed on the stick. It seemed to me from what I saw that it did not look like a DPP prosecution brief. Certainly not in the form of what I'm used to seeing here in the New South Wales District Court system. I took that view and looked at it like what I mean term investigator's brief, and intention was to wait and see what the brief would be served by the ACT Director's Office. The DPP was not satisfied and emailed the AFP seeking further details surrounding the circumstances. In response, the DPP demands to know who had made the decision to hand the brief directly to the defence. The AFP informed the DPP of the policeman's name and his reason for the decision and direction as follows. Either which way, it's not great. But I mean, this is not over. I hope Brittany Higgins gets all the justice she deserves. My gosh, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be in her position. But back to the political campaign. Even though that one was half political, I think this one is definitely one of the best things that I've seen so far. So buckle up for one of the best speeches from Jason Clare I've ever heard. Okay.
Say this week? It's not my fault. It's not my job.
We'll make sure that that's on max volume.
And what did Scott Morrison say this week? It's not my fault. It's not my job. How many times have you heard that? You deserve better than that. This is the best country in the world. But you deserve a better government. You deserve better than a government that blows $5.5 billion on submarines that don't exist. You deserve better than a government that drops $50 billion on an NBN made out of enough copper to wrap around the planet 1.5 times. A government that's responsible for the worst decade of wage growth in history and did it to you deliberately. A government that thinks all you need to do to win the trust of Pacific nations is play the ukulele. And thinks climate change is what happens when you check out the April sun in Cuba. And a Prime Minister who thinks there's no problem with corruption in his government, while sitting there in his cabinet are more smoking guns than a Clint Eastwood movie. A Prime Minister who thinks his job is to dress up pretending to do other people's jobs. This bloke is all tinsel, no tree.
Okay, I think that becomes quite clear how good this election cycle is going to be. I have been viewing different speeches around it, and we're going to have a look at some of them. One of the ones that really, really still gets me is this one. I've got to find it now. Oh, I think it's that one. Nope, it's definitely this one. Check this one out. Oh.
Morrison to continually tell... It's very desperate and patronising of Scott Morrison to continually tell Australians that we don't know who Anthony Albanese is. I thought I'd make this for Scott Morrison and the media outlets to continually repeat this line. Maybe they don't have the time. Maybe they're busy having drinks together. Albo grew up in Sydney, Camperdown, council housing. He was raised by a single mum who was on what was called an invalid pension, so they didn't have money. She always wanted better for Anthony, and he always wanted better for her. He was a big part of his community, and they all looked after each other. This explains a lot about his values when it comes to community and looking after those less fortunate. Albo joined the Labor Party, got a bachelor's degree in economics, Member of Parliament since 1996, the member for Grangela. Unlike Morrison, he's always gone for the same team, the Rabbitohs. He loves music and he loves DJing. He actually has decent taste in music. Thing you will never get with the Liberal Party. 2007, when Rudd formed government, Anthony became Minister for Infrastructure. He established Infrastructure Australia. $75 billion worth of projects. None of them ran over time and none of them ran over cost. Wrote the blueprint on infrastructure and delivered. This is around the same time Morrison's been fired from his tourism gig. You still don't know the details of that. Not long after that, while Anthony's working hard building this country, Morrison was out running a smear campaign against Michael Toke to steal his seat. There's a whole lot of shit in Morrison's past. Albo has also been Deputy Prime Minister, so he knows the job quite well. Also important to remember, when Anthony and the Labor Party left government, our economy was ranked first in the world. Since then, the Liberal Party have quadrupled the debt. I want the adults back in charge, to be honest. Australians deserve a Prime Minister that actually cares. I can see that with Anthony now, as I can through his whole life. This man deserves to be Prime Minister, and we deserve better.
I never share my chocolate.
You'll never share? Well, quick, get in and take the big one.
Okay.
There's a big one there. They got it under control there. Yeah, just a little one will do. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Come on.
86.
Any of the aged care workers over the last few weeks.
What made you move up to job?
One almost looks like Club.
There you go, they said it couldn't be done.
All the beautiful homes in the road.
Now that to me encapsulates everything for me about the Labor Party. I think as this election cycle is going, I can see weird photo ops that Scott Morrison is doing and looking very desperate, and the media clinging to hope that somehow he will get over the line through their help. And I think if he was an adequate leader, they wouldn't need to do this. I think if the media was not so into him and not so obvious, if he was adequate as a leader, They wouldn't need to bend over so far to make sure that he got over the line. They would be like, I'm not scared of a bit of competition, bring it. But that's not how the media has behaved. They're not only afraid of a change of government, but they actively campaign for that not happening. So an example of this is how when they talk about recently in the AFR, they recently did a story saying how all these years of having a Liberal government, it didn't matter because it's all Labor's fault. I mean, it's one thing to watch this government perform badly. It's another thing to watch this government be shielded by a media that's just as afraid as the Liberal Party to lose. That level of desperation cannot be overlooked or undermined. This media seems to think that we haven't noticed what it's doing. And I wouldn't be frankly doing this if the media was doing what they were supposed to do. They wouldn't be afraid of a challenge. But the media seems so afraid of an Anthony Albanese challenge that they go with, well, we just don't know him. What do we know? And it's embarrassing. All these years that they say, we're respected journalists. Boil it down to brass tacks, and no, they're really biased little bottom feeders that turned around and said, no, I don't care about democracy, I care about my tax breaks. And that there is what's wrong with this landscape. If the Prime Minister wants to say that he's up for a fair challenge, call off your media dogs. But you won't. You won't. You're going to have a media that backs you no matter how bad you perform, Scott. And that's embarrassing. Imagine needing that much help to get over the line. That has to be embarrassing. And the fact that Rupert Murdoch chooses such big losers to the point that they need that much help, that's pathetic. But I'll even go one step further. Not only does that look pathetic, but I think it looks even worse when you have a look at the whole situation, like the 30,000 feet view. When I'm looking at this, I always go, well, why would you pick someone that needs all that help? You know what eventually happened? The viewer readership dropped. People no longer trust it. Because of what Rupert Murdoch did in picking leaders the way that he did and messing around in democracies, people lost their interest in media. And it's undeniable the damage that he did. He messed around in democracy in several different countries. Brexit wouldn't be a thing right now if Rupert Murdoch hadn't made it a thing. That was his genius idea, because when he hacked a dead little girl's phone and got caught, and he hacked the freaking Queen, the Sun, the newspaper that they had, eventually there was an investigation and it was found that he acted highly inappropriately and they weren't willing to take him on. The European nations were like, no, we shouldn't have to deal with him. Rupert Murdoch's solution to that, to the European euro that was created, that Britain created, was no. We may have created the euro, but we're just going to step out now. That I think is shameful. And I think that Rupert Murdoch needs to be held accountable for that action alone. But there's more. What happened in the USA? The insurrection. Donald Trump. How Donald Trump got there. What the media did to put Donald Trump in that position. And what that did to democracy. What that did to democracy in this country. And how badly we are now rated for our level of corruption. Thank you, Rupert Murdoch. You're a dick. It blows me away that there would be someone so anti the people that it would openly do that. I can't imagine why someone would do that. But remember, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. And because Rupert Murdoch's over it, apparently the media is too. So they've sort of done this blackout of saying, hey, yeah, we're still got a body count up behind us. It's all a little bit embarrassing. We are 20 days out from what will be, to me, the election that stops the nation. I know everyone talks about the races that stop the nation, the horse races. But to me, this election should stop our nation. Because this is either going to make it go forward with an ALP government that is stable and ready to lead, compared to one that the media needs to prop up and help through this bungling mess that it made in a quadruple debt moment. Now, the choice to me couldn't be clearer. But just so we're clear, there isn't a third outside runner. Craig Kelly, I'm looking right at you, buddy. You cannot run for PM. I don't know which civics class you took, but can't run as PM. And you can do that deal with Scott Morrison in Western Australia. Congrats, buddy. In Western Australia, Clive's pretty hated. I don't know if you remember, but he took their state to court. So, if you don't remember, Clive Palmer was stupid enough to take the Western Australia Premier to court. And when he did so, he, genius that he is at this very bright spark moment, lost that case. It was a case where he was trying to fight the hard lockdown that Western Australia had for the pandemic, in which it's still practicing the best it can in the middle of a pandemic. So Clive is a hated man. There's no talking around it. Do that deal, buddy. Let's directly put it. If you get... okay, let's do what they do. One sec. Here we go. Here we go. See? Watch this. You get Clive if you vote LNP. So, let's directly link that to. Since the media is so hell-bent to say that ALP can't lead in its own independent right, which it always does, it is the LNP either needs the Tea Party or the Nationals, or it needs somebody. It can't independently just be the Liberals. Or it needs little baby crying whingy Clive. So that's what we're up against, people. We're dealing with a crybaby. One that cannot handle anything. Remember, Clive said COVID wasn't a big deal. 3 ambulances rock up to his house later. I mean, really? If you're going to be an anti-vaxxer, at least be smart enough to not get the virus. Dear God, you're an idiot, Clive. But that's not the only idiocy of Clive Palmer. Why run ads saying that you can have Craig Kelly run as PM? Why would his party believe that Craig Kelly can be Prime Minister? Why would then said Prime Minister do a deal with Clive knowing that Craig Kelly is running around telling people he can be Prime Minister? It's all too weird. This almost feels like one of the moments where, like, the reality shouldn't be this weird. You couldn't make this up sort of world. And when I think about it, it is really weird. Where did Clive Palmer get the idea that he could have one of his little weird followers like Craig Kelly be on his party and then say, oh, no, he's not just part of my party. No, he's going to be Prime Minister. What? How? Why would you tell voters that? How isn't the AEC stepping in on that and saying, no, that's clearly a blatant lie? There has to be rules about this, people. There are new voters coming up through the system. And newsflash, we don't teach civics like we should. There is a lot of idiots walking around going, hey, maybe Craig Kelly can run. No. For those of you who are tuning in into some alternate universe, no. It is either a Liberal leader or a ALP leader. That's it. And if we changed it, say we did, right? The only other party I can think of that gets close is the Greens. For me, that would be well away from this. But there are way worse options than Scott Morrison. Picture someone like Pauline Hanson being Prime Minister. See, when you start to factor in how weird this whole cycle can get, suddenly this two-party preferred system seems rational. Like when you're like, someone like Pauline Hanson or Craig Kelly could run. See, suddenly it looks a little bit saner. I for years I've always thought, but there's only two people that can run. How is that a race? No, it's a race. But I wouldn't want to change this. Because when you look at the weirdos that are running around saying, I want to be Prime Minister, unless the only party that I'd do that with is the Greens or there's one that my daughter's trying to get me into, the Democratic Socialist Party. She's had me looking at it. And I gotta say, I agree with a lot of their fundamentals. I'm not gonna lie to her. And, she's 15 and she knows what I do. And, yeah, she's right. I do agree with a lot of some of their values. But that's where this thing gets sticky. When we're talking about who's going to change this nation, we have Anthony Albanese that clearly shows kind and compassionate moments where he's saying to their old age people, hey, I'm going to fix this. Where he's telling parents of children, I'm going to fix education and I'm going to make preschool cheaper. This is like cradle to the grave kind of stuff. So when you start out with having your family, you want someone that will help and support that family unit. You want to know government supports you having a family. You want to make sure that the services are there when you choose to have that family, like daycare. But you're also at the same sort of age where your parents might be aging and they might need to be in some sort of care. Well, the solution for that is this. Old age care. And ALP promised to make that one of their key policies is old age care. And I don't want my elderly just eating from a 2-minute noodle packet or a can of baked beans. I want them fed real food. I want them to be able to be showered once a day. I want them to go outside and enjoy life. I want visiting days, for these elderly people where families can come in and definitely feel like their loved ones are getting treated well. I want the ratio of the amount of nurses to patients. And I want our nurses to be treated with respect. I want each and every part of this aspect and that policy to be a thing. And the only way you can do that is by voting for Albo. So, as much as this is going to be a issue with who's the better leader. I think it's quite clear. But I'm going to show you something that I think we all should be looking at. And I know I say this a lot, you know, take a look at this and how they've fundamentally screwed things up. I want you to watch this and tell me what you think. Okay, hold on. I've got to find it. This isn't going to be easy. Now, Scott Morrison is making a lot of promises. He'll do this, he'll do that. But really, we have a cost of living issue. Now, what does that mean? It means he took 22 cents out of a 44 cents fuel tax that we had. You've got to remember, they are the higher taxing party. That is fact. You can check it every time. Every time you get a Liberal government, you get higher taxes. So check out this latest lie that Scott Morrison is telling. And here's the deal. If interest rates do go up 100%, we've been told that it is tip 2. Whether it does or it doesn't, there is political interference if it doesn't. But the way that it's going, it rightfully should rise. And that should cost the Liberal government. Why? Because they said they can keep all of this stuff under control. They made a promise to you that they could do this. They said that they were the great economic managers. Liar. They are the highest taxing government in history. There is repeated evidence of this.
Announcement today. On the weekend, Scott Morrison gave an ironclad guarantee not to implement a global agreement on making multinationals pay their fair share of tax. He effectively walked away from a 130-country deal that was signed off by Australia on the 8th of October 2021. Now, Scott Morrison made 55 calls to leaders of 30 countries to try and secure Matthias Cormann the job as the head of the OECD. But he's now broken his promise to the Paris-based OECD to act on multinational tax dodging. It wouldn't be the first time Scott Morrison's lied to the French, but it's pretty remarkable that he would break a deal which was brokered by Matthias Cormann. And the measures we're announcing today on multinational tax are pro-business, they're carefully calibrated, and they're responsible. They target the scourge of tax havens, like the Cayman Islands and Bermuda. And when Scott Morrison thinks about the Cayman Islands, he probably thinks it's a nice place to go for a holiday next time a natural disaster strikes Australia. But we know that tax havens are the hidey holes for ill-gotten gains. They are places where terrorists, drug runners and kidnappers store their loot. If you're doing business in a tax haven, you're rubbing shoulders with criminals. 2/5 of multinational profits now pass through tax havens. And according to one study, the majority of money that's held in tax havens is held there in breach of other countries' tax laws. And cracking down on tax havens is about levelling the playing field for Australian businesses. If you're a cafe in Rockhampton, you're probably not thinking about how to stash your profits off in the Cayman Islands. If you're a local firm, then you're not using these sort of tax artifices. But you're competing in an increasingly digitised economy against multinational firms that are using tax havens. When multinationals pay less, Australians pay more. Our measures implement the OECD's two-pillar agreement and target the abuse of debt deductions in a way that's specifically been recommended by the OECD. As you know, there's 3 debt deduction rules for multinationals: the worldwide gearing ratio, the arm's length test and the safe harbour rule. And our proposal is simply to change the safe harbour rule from 60% of assets to 30% of profits. Firms will still be able to use those other 2 debt deduction tests. And if the Liberals have a problem with us implementing the OECD's approach on debt deductions, they'd better pick up the phone to Matthias Cormann. We're also providing additional transparency. If you're a listed firm, you should disclose to shareholders the risk you're taking by operating in tax havens. If you want a large government tender, then you should disclose to Australian taxpayers your country of tax domicile. We'll also implement a register of beneficial ownership. This is something that the Liberals promised 6 years ago, but they failed to deliver on. It makes it sure that Australians know who owns listed firms. And that specifically makes it harder for Vladimir Putin's cronies to stash their money in the Australian share market. This isn't a speculative risk. Serena Lillywhite, the head of Transparency International, has said that Australia is one of the best places to launder dirty money and has called for a beneficial ownership register. Australia is lagging behind other countries. Boris Johnson's announced a beneficial ownership register which he says will open up the Matryoshka doll of Russian-owned companies. We know from the Panama Papers that Putin's people use tax havens. So if Australia really wants to shirt-front Putin in a way that'll hurt him, we need to tackle tax havens and tackle the lack of transparency in the system right now.
So how did it come to be that your finger became injured?
Oh,
There was at one point where I
okay. So this is a continuation of that. So what follows that? Well, here's a scare campaign that I thought would be done. But their ideas aren't new. And nothing they're doing is working. So what do you do when what you're doing isn't working? Well, you try something old. You go with, let's try another carbon tax lie. And it didn't just help Scott Morrison to perpetuate that lie. There was help even from the ABC to do it. Now, listen up, media. If you're serious, like real journalists, you know what you're not going to do? You're not going to put your hedge on a bet on which person you want to win. You're not going to pretend like there isn't a 2-horse race. You're not going to put your guy over the opposition. You gotta do this if you're real and if you're out there and you're listening. I like the playback people because they tend to leave me a few comments. If you happen to see this and you know a real journalist out there saying things like, I don't know, what's the difference with ALP and LNP? And if you hear a journalist come out and say, yeah, but they did the carbon tax, you know that they're not a real journalist. Because you know that that's like lie. That's the issue with this. The media caught on to a lie. And if they were fair and balanced, they wouldn't need a lie. They wouldn't need a gimmick. But here we go. Gimmick away. With Australia's lived experience of the global heating, you'd think that we've moved past grown men strategizing hyperbolic encounters with invisible things. If you've been paying attention over the past decade or so, you may have noticed opponents of climate change action spend a lot of time talking about things that don't exist. Now, this was a Peter Credlin, Tony Abbott's chief advisor, fantastic idea. Now, it should have been what was just left there. This should have been like one of those stories when you looked at it from a full moment, you should have been able to go, oh, they're lying. 10 years later, they're still telling that same lie, which is weird that Catherine Murphy needs to point out that it is not only a lie, but a whopper. This is a whopper of a lie. And David Spears was happy to continue with that big lie. If we had a media that was real, like just picturing Fantasyland, they would go, no, they're clearly lying. I'm not going to help them do that. But here we are in 2022 with a media that's like, I'm so totally going to help them get away with that. It's so gross. Tony Abbott pioneered the technique by winning an election promising a repeal of the carbon tax that never actually existed. Yeah, you heard that right. It never actually existed. A carbon tax that was never a thing. This is because they made up a term and they knew damn well what they were doing. 10 years later, we're still having the same fight. Why? Because they got to coin the phrase, the media ran with the phrase, and rather than correcting that massive lie, now we're left with this invisible thing that Tony Abbott made up 10 years later. Abbott's former chief of staff, Peter Credlin, is leading the authority on this. Point to you, over to you, Peter. It wasn't a carbon tax, as you know. This is what she later admitted. It may be in many other things in terms, but we made it a carbon tax, Credlin said in 2017. So they made it a carbon tax. And the media ran with it as a carbon tax. But guess what, kiddos? It's not a carbon tax. So, ta-da! Peter Credlin openly admits it was never a carbon tax. But Scott Morrison, being the big dullhead that he is, didn't notice the floods, the fires, everything else, comes back with da-da-da, carbon tax. Because ideas are for weirdos, apparently. Here's the thing, Scott Morrison. If you're going to run with a lie 10 years in the running, how about you don't have the person that created the lie tell you it was a lie? Tell everyone it was a lie. Tell her whole audience, we made it a lie. We made this lie. See, that's interesting. We made it a fight about the hip pocket and not about the environment, and that was brutal retail politics. Ta-da! I give you Peter Credlin, scumbag in the world of politics. A lady that pretended like her fees would be her if you told the truth on her. Miss DUI, a lady that got off because, Tony Abbott. Another moment of police abuses. That tends to be now a rampant thing. If it wasn't bad enough what they did with Brittany Higgins, did you know that they got Peter Credlin off a DUI? Yeah, thanks, Tony. Glad to know that you were the first original Prime Minister to interfere in a DUI case. See, that's how Scott Morrison knew he could fuck around with the AFP. Why? Because Tony Abbott did it with Peter Credlin. He made sure that DUI was bye-bye. She still held her licence. For the record, Labor's policy was a carbon price, not a tax. There's a difference. See? And now we get to the real heart of it. Abbott and Credlin flipping a carbon pricing into a tax, a better than Labor government rolled over too easily. No, not true. The media made it that. The media coined it that. The Liberal Party coined it that. Labor Party didn't roll on anything. You just didn't give it air. Whatever the ALP said, you were going to demonise it. See, that's how this game is played. You get to make an absurd claim. Anyone from the Liberal Party gets to say whatever they want. Media goes, yep, I'll believe that. They run with the story. Then you say, oh, the Labor Party just conceded. No, they didn't. What actually happened was you told them, no, that's a tax. Because Peter Credlin lied. You're now admitting Peter Credlin lied. And you're now admitting that the media ran with her lie. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. See, that's what makes this a little bit funny. Not funny as in ha-ha, as in funny as in, are you freaking serious? It's unbelievable. So every time the current generation of coalition politicians utters the word carbon tax and Labor in the same sentence, understand this, they are lying. And worse, they fully know they are lying. See, it's not just me who told you. They know. They openly know it's not what was presented. But it doesn't matter. The Murdoch merchant would tell you that your pocket, what's held in your pocket is more important than the air you breathe. That's what Rupert Murdoch made that each election cycle about. He was like, no. You mightn't be able to breathe, but you've got money in your pocket. And he let that be the symbolism of the carbon credit emissions trading scheme. It was never a tax, and it was never going to be a $500 pork roast or whatever it is that they were claiming. It was never ever going to be that, but it didn't matter. The horse had already bolted from the stables. The media were already rabid and saying, no, the Liberal Party is correct. There was no fact checking. There was none of that. It was, we say it is, so it is. See, that's why Murdoch's readership is so low. People caught that. See, here's the thing. Rupert Murdoch destroyed himself. He is actively destroying himself each and every day by doing this. So each time he tells you, oh, I've backed this horse and this is who I want in government, he's actively destroying his own company. How? Look at his viewership. It's down, down, down. It has gotten out there and so bad for Rupert Murdoch that he now takes subsidies off the government, like huge ones, to stay in the power that he has. And if you don't meet Rupert Murdoch, say if you're going to be an American president, you have to meet him. You're going to be an English president, a prime minister, you have to meet him. If you're going to do it in Australia, you have to meet him. Do you know who didn't? Fun fact, Kevin Rudd wouldn't do it. So they killed him. Made him non-existent. Killed him off. Because that's just how it rolls. That's what they do. You know, if you don't meet and kiss the ring of Rupert Murdoch, they're like, no. And that has ultimately made this the central key element. Rupert Murdoch made sure that it didn't matter with the Liberal Party whether you could have clean air to breathe or whether your waterways were clean. No, that's not important. Why would that be important? Hey, did you check you got an extra $10 because we didn't make the companies stop polluting you in your waterways? Weird. That's the fight we should have been having. Do we want a cleaner waterway or do we want an extra $10 in your pocket? That's how it always should have come down. But the media, not honest, so they're not going to tell you that that's what they were doing. They were lying. You think Australia lived experience of global heating, catastrophe of floods and fires, we'd have moved past grown men staging hyperbolic encounters with invisible things. But during a 30-minute, now this is 30 minutes of a monologue that was heavy on the harangue and the light of the coherence of 2GB Chief Ranter Ray Hadley was back on a carbon tax, trying to force Anthony Albanese into this. There'll be no carbon tax. Why? Why, Ray Hadley? If your guy is so good and such a great almighty leader, why would you need to do that? Why would you need gotcha questions? Since Scott Morrison's such a great leader and all, and such a great economic manager, I have a challenge to you, media. If your guy is so wonderful, back off. Let Scott Morrison run this campaign on his own. Sure, run up and ask him questions like any other political campaigner. You know, do the fair and balanced thing. Give it a shot. Give it a whirl. If your guy's as good as what you say he is, sure, it'll be a shoo-in. But we both know, you're not going to do that, are you? See, this is where it gets weird really quickly. Because we know that the fear is written all over him. Ray Hadley's performance was deplorable. I listened to 30 minutes of, hey, Albo, guess what this person said, and make me a promise, swear on this. Why would anybody listen to Ray Hadley? Unless you're some gross person that's like, yeah, that's my listener of choice. It's grotesque. It's bullying. It's no better than when Alan Jones started bullying Julia Gillard and telling her that her dad would die in shame and she should be in a chaff bag. Or when he was bullying Gladys Berejiklian over horse racing. Or just the many other times that they do it. Radio hosts are gross at this point. I haven't really seen one that goes, oh yeah, I'm really classy about this political campaign and I don't have a horse in the race. They seem to be this really rabid sort of people that say things that are just deplorable. And let me tell you this. I would like to break down the Ray Hadley interview, but it's that bad. My friends, I tell you, it's bad. It's cringy. Hadley had Anthony on the line saying Labor leader has COVID but didn't deter Ray from using the Labor leader as a performative pinata. Hadley clearly imagined himself setting up a campaign masterstroke as he asked Albanese whether he would repeat Julia Gillard's infamous pledge that there would be no carbon tax. See, because it was never a tax. Never a tax. It was an emissions trading scheme. Peter Credlin admits that it was never a tax. But it doesn't matter. Ray Hadley doesn't care about facts. He just wants his guy to win. And he wants his audience to think, no, I gotcha. I'm asking the hard-hitting questions. No, you're not. You're actively lying. And you can dress it up and put it into pretty little fancy little overtones. But no, you're actively lying. There's just no way around it. If you want to be honest, this isn't how you do it. Just putting it out there. Okay. So, what is happening with Clive Palmer? And just how dodgy is he? Not only is he going around telling people, hey, I can be Prime Minister. Well, Craig Kelly. He's telling people that Craig Kelly can run for Prime Minister. Funny, right? No, it gets funnier. Well, not funny as in haha, it's like funny as in, oh my God, are they really pulling this off? Listen to how bad this whole thing with Clive is.
In the very difficult circumstances of COVID-19, the decision of this Liberal government to join forces with Clive Palmer to seek to force open WA's hard border will never be forgotten by me nor the people of Western Australia. Clive Palmer is a liar, a hypocrite, a narcissist, an egomaniac, a threat to our democracy. He is a shifty businessman who lists litigation as a hobby. This is a man facing charges for fraud and dishonest use of his position as a company director, accused by ASIC of illegally funneling millions into his 2013 election campaign, charges that carry a 5-year prison term. Clive Palmer is the man who refused to pay his workers at Queensland Nickel their entitlements after it went into liquidation, while grossly throwing away around his millions on his crazy vanity projects. Clive Palmer recently dismissed the coronavirus as a media beat-up. This is a man seeking to bankrupt the WA government with a $30 billion damages claim, a claim that equates to $12,000 for every man, woman and child in WA. And let's not forget the $60 million Palmer threw at the last election in support of the Liberals. Against the health advice of the WA government and against the interests of the WA people and the hard work of the McGowan Labor government, this Liberal government has provided evidence in support of Clive Palmer. They've said they're withdrawn from the case, but the evidence is on the record.
Yep. And that's where we are, people. And that's why what they're doing is so terrible. But I got something else fun. No, I got something really fun to show you. So, hold on one sec. Okay, so here's a fun one. Alrighty. Oh.
For Warringah, which of course was Tony. Well, captain's pick, Catherine Deeves, Liberal candidate for Warringah, which of course was Tony Abbott's old seat, is in a bit of hot water at the moment, not so much because she isn't keen on trans women competing in women's sports, which she isn't, but because in the process she's compared her anti-trans activism to the Nazi resistance movement in World War II. She said that half of all males with trans identities were sex offenders, compared an LGBT youth campaign to grooming, and dismissed complaints from the trans community about the way they're treated as emotional, and saying while sipping Pinot Noir that they said they were all going to commit suicide and blah, blah. Not only that, but the seat is currently held by independent Zali Steggall, and Ms Deeves has recruited Ms Steggall's ex-husband's new wife as her campaign manager. Now, what's the big deal, you say? Catherine Deeves was Scott Morrison's personal choice, so what could possibly be wrong with her? A question I could very well put to Chief of Staff for Catherine Deeves, Ms Spangle.
The Deeves wears Prada, darling.
Now, recruiting the new wife of the sitting member's ex-husband to help in the campaign does sound like a pretty sick and appalling mind game.
Standard LNP tactics, Sean. Darling, right out of ScoMo's playbook. The quickest way into the mind of your opponent is by...
Hold on. I need to back up. So, Catherine Deeves went and hired her ex-husband's new wife. Let's just absorb that for a moment. And then she said all those terrible things. What a captain's pick, hey? This has turned out to be a great showing for Scott Morrison, and he supports all of this.
Ripping out their heart, the ultimate psych.
Okay. Well, in what way is the trans community like Nazi Germany?
Catherine wasn't judging, Sean. Anyway, who says Nazi Germany was a bad thing? In fact, have you seen their uniforms? Oh my God, fabulous! Anyway, she was comparing herself to the Nazi resistance movement. Big difference.
All right. So the comment was less a damning of the trans community and more a celebration of the French people.
That's why she was drinking Pinot Noir, darling.
What about equating trans men with sex offenders?
50% of them, Sean. Don't make it sound worse than it is.
Well, where did she get that figure?
Oh, I know. It's to die for, right? She must work out because she has a smoking hot female body, and darling, that's what it's all about. If Catherine or any young girl who wants to be like Catherine is working out in a gym, they want to feel safe and they want to be able to win at sport against other girls. If you're trans, good for you. Set up your own Olympics or something. But leave our girls to compete against each other as nature intended.
Well, in Catherine's defence, she has apologised for the language she used and promised to be more respectful.
When marginalising the trans community, yes, exactly, Sean. And if the same-sex marriage debate proved anything, it was that we can divide this country under the cover of free speech and counter accusations of religious intolerance and not have it completely destroy us.
But why even have this fight? I mean, only about 0.0004% of the population identifies as trans women, and even if all of them wanted to play sport, they'd barely make up a team at Catherine's local bowling centre. Why is it such a big issue?
Well, darling, Darling, it's like they say. First they came for the communists, blah, blah, blah.
Plus, under the current guidelines in professional sport, testosterone levels have to be within average cis range for 2 years before competition, making trans athletes biologically analogous to their cis competitors.
Listen, Boy Rogers, you might not come from the planet Turf, but most of us do. If Catherine's good enough for Scott Morrison, she should be good enough for the...
So that is a term I had to learn from my daughter. That's straight woman that's born as a woman and then stays like that. I think that's how it went. Yeah, that's what he means by cis.
rest of us.
Yeah, but
She's certainly good enough for those idiots in Warringah. My God, they put up with Tony Abbott for 25 years. The bar must still be pretty low.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Spangle.
Lovely to see you, darling.
All right, so that's the sort of thing that we're dealing with. We're dealing with deplorable people that Scott Morrison just decided he'd pick. He kind of makes his own comedy, but it's not funny as in haha, it's like funny as in cringy. And I think the more that we're viewing, the scarier it gets. And there's no doubting how incredibly much more cringy this can get. But what if I told you One Nation could be in big trouble? I don't know if it's before this election cycle or after, but I have it on good authority that One Nation did something that they shouldn't have done. Check out this.
You deserve more.
Hold on. Okay, so One Nation ran this ad. It's offensive, it's deplorable, and the very fact that One Nation ran this ad is a sign that they're also helping the Liberal Party. To even pretend at this point that One Nation isn't helping the Liberal Party, I don't know. You see this and judge for yourself. This is the ad that One Nation is running.
Albo, I brought you some more soup. How are you feeling?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Penny. I'm feeling better. I'll be back on the campaign trail, lickety-split.
Everything's under control. We're ahead in the polls. You just need to stay here. Oh, and I brought you these.
Oh, thanks, Penny. I love Sudokus.
No, these are postal votes, under the names of dead people.
Now, I need to set up that this is what she was doing. She's making it sound like the Labor Party is going to do what Donald Trump claimed in the United States. Watch. And it wouldn't surprise me the Liberal Party did stuff like this. This is how they know about
Fake
it.
identities. Some were stolen out of letterboxes.
Oh, really? But isn't that illegal?
Oh, Albo, relax.
So how did you get Toto on the electoral roll?
Easy. The Australian Electoral Commission don't require ID.
Really?
Of course not. That would be racist.
Oh, yeah, no, of course, yeah. That would be extremely racist.
Every vote counts, Anthony. It's not like we can stop people voting for Morrison and we can't change their vote.
So we can't stop the votes. We can't turn the votes around. What do we do?
Vote people.
Vote people?
People that like to vote early and vote often.
But what if the AEC check ID at the voting centre?
Well, they won't do that, Albo. That would be racist.
That's right, yep. But Penny, how does this all add up to winning the election?
It could. The 2010 election was won by less votes than the number of people that admitted to voting more than once.
But surely the AEC tracked those people.
See the claims that One Nation is making. I don't know how far this thing got, but it was pretty outrageous.
Down and charge them with voter fraud?
Nope. Last election there were thousands of people that voted more than once, and only about 20 of those people were investigated, and no one's ever been convicted of voter fraud.
Yeah, because that would be racist.
No, because the AEC won't find out until it's too late, and by the time they realise, we'll already be in government, kicking back, passing laws, spending money.
Oh yeah, that'll be so good, Penny. Ah, Penny! There's a bat in my soup!
Of course, that's how we gave you COVID. The good news is that you won't be able to campaign while you've got it.
And it gets worse. See? This is a real One Nation campaign thing.
And the bad news?
You'll be fine by next week. Now enjoy your soup, Albo. And if you don't, that's racist.
Penny's gonna kill me!
Yep. So, this is why you don't do dumb stuff like this. This should exclude her from running as a candidate. Totally, this should have stripped her of any idea that she's running a campaign. Here's the thing, this should be a jailable offence. One Nation faces an Electoral Commission investigation after suggesting Labor might use fraud to win next month's election. The AEC said it was disappointed in the latest skip on One Nation leader Pauline Hanson. Released on Friday, the Please Explain skit features Penny Wong offering fake poster ballots to COVID-hit Labor leader Anthony Albanese. I brought you these, Senator Wong. See, here's the thing. The ABC reports the organisation is investigating to see whether it can do anything about the skit because of the allegations of voter fraud in Australia. Alternative media watchers said, would you be able to detail the aspects of the fault so I can explain to my complaint to Pauline Hanson office? Thanks. No election has ever run or had a margin smaller than the alleged multiple votes. ID is required when you're enrolled to vote. Work closely with births, deaths and marriages to update the roll when people pass away. Senator Hanson said her vote video has been removed from Facebook following the AEC's complaint, and she also claimed that it had been censored on TikTok. Yeah, no, you're not being censored. No. What's happening is all the chickens come home to roost and you got caught. You can't just say these things. There is a system enabled where you can't just lie like this. And I would like to see an Albanese government deal with lies like this. This is outrageous. Sometimes the truth hurts, so I won't be taking down the cartoon or social media. So now she's claiming that her skit was truthful. Which part was truthful, Miss Hanson? Let's just be clear about this. You know none of it was, and you know that you're being dodgy about the whole darn thing. But it doesn't matter. There was more trouble for One Nation on Friday with one of its candidates referred to the federal police after also nominating himself as a candidate for another party in a second electorate. Because why not? One Nation is a bunch of racist idiots that can't contain itself, and it has to be a little bit crimey. Why? Because they need these weird fringes of society that do stuff like this. And then they'll pretend like they're the victims in every scenario. So this dude that's now in trouble for running as a candidate in 2 different parties, we'll see what happens. 100 to 1, he's saying, no, they're picking on me. Malcolm Heffernan, who is listed as a financial advisor, is under investigation for using 2 different birth dates. So in one video, she claims that Labor is cheating while having a candidate that's actively cheating. I know, that's not a good look to me, but I'm not One Nation. 2 birth dates, 2 different names, 2 names to declare himself as a candidate for the May 21 federal election. He was nominated for One Nation in the New South Wales seat of Banks for the Australian Federation Party for the West Australian seat of Breen. The AUC said that the nominations for the 2 electoral divisions were in contravention of the Election Act. So he was in a seat in New South Wales, And then he went to the Australian Federation Party in Western Australia. Yeah, that's kind of crimey, dude. No. The AEC said the nominations of 2 electoral divisions were in contravention to the Act. Given the declarations are false, and the AEC now referred to the matter to the Federal Police. Come on, Federal Police, do something. We have notified Mr. Heffernan and both registered political parties regarding the referral. Each nomination form has a signed declaration that the candidate did not intend to run as a candidate in any other election held on the same day. The contravention means that Mr. Heffernan is incapable of being elected. By candidate, nominations for the 2 electorates must remain as they were formally declared last week. Ballot papers have been printed and the same voters have already received voting postal packs. So she just sort of made sure one of her candidates was out of the race. Makes a video to claim Albo is cheating while having someone that is cheating. Gee, couldn't see that one coming. Gets weird with these people. Okay, so as we're getting close to where we're at, I want to talk about more that is going on. So, oh jeez. I just need to find it. It's gone all out of place on me and I don't know what happened. It was all set up and then boom. Okay. Oh, and this thing keeps popping up. Okay. So, what do you know about Alan Jones? I'm about to share a little thing with you that I recently found in talking to a friend. So, did you know that Alan Jones ran as a Liberal twice? I didn't, but this story has a lot of juicy details. So I thought I'd share them with you. I think we're in a moment where this is beyond crazy, because now we know that he ran twice, lost, and then became a radio shock jock. One sec. Okay. So, we'll fix that. Okay. Here we go. Oh. Things have sort of been a little bit skew-whiff. I don't know what happened. Voters did Alan Jones a huge favour when he stood for Parliament in the seat of Elwood. They rejected the Liberal Party candidate in a by-election in 1978 and again at the general election in the following year. Jones went on to become a top-rating radio broadcaster starting at 2UE in 1985. He also coached the Wallabies. Right? I didn't know this. For those of you who are a little bit older, probably did. I never knew that he ran in politics. I didn't know that he ran twice. And I didn't know that he ran as a Liberal. Nothing seems to shock me anymore. Because, of course, he did. Elwood was a blue ribbon Liberal seat held by former Premier Sir Eric Willis for 28 years. He resigned in mid-term. Alan Jones is 35, pre-selected in his place, defeating 11 other candidates in a series of 3 ballots. Jones was a company director of the arts graduate from the University of Queensland, a state tennis player and a former teacher. He had completed a postgraduate degree in politics at Oxford University 18 months earlier. Although he lives outside the electorate in Werribee on the Upper North Shore, he intends moving to Elwood soon, the media report said. Jones was expected to easily retain the seat with the Liberals, but faced some big obstacles. Premier Neville Rand's personal popularity soared, and after he led the Labour Party victory in 1976 cliffhanger general election, which was decided by former rugby league star Kevin Ryan narrowly winning in Hurstville. Voters had also become disillusioned with Malcolm Fraser's federal election coalition government. There was a huge swing away from the Liberals in the Irwood by-election, to which the potent of the landslide would occur in 1979 general election. Jones gained only 42% of the primary vote in the by-election and 37% in the general election. The seat was a win for Labor. Ken Gabb, 28, a solicitor in the Crown's office. Mr. Gabb, who had lived in Irwood all of his life, became the youngest member in the Legislative Assembly. It was not the first time Jones tried to enter Parliament. In 1974, when he was a senior English master at the King's School in Parramatta, he moved to Canberra to work in the Country Party Secretariat and unsuccessfully stood for the pre-selection of the marginal seat Eden Monero, which, fun fact, last went to ALB. So, I understand you drive a flashy one. Okay, so that is the story of when Alan Jones ran as a candidate. It's interesting, I never knew that Alan Jones ran as a candidate more than once. Even once, I didn't know that he'd done it. But to do it twice, lose, and then hedge your bets like you're being this fair and objective radio reporter for many, many years, when really you were a Liberal through and through. You ran as a Liberal twice. Had Sky News not been created, I think he could have hit it. I think he could have sort of circumvented how biased he was. But the very second Sky News had become this thing, it's a little bit like watching Sky After Dark. You watch it and it's all like, guess how the Labour Party's going to kill you. That's the sort of tone that you get, and you're like, no, this is weird, right? This is really weird. But I want to talk about that because it's important. But this is sort of on the lines of what went on in the USA. What happened with Alan Jones is a huge problem. They get these people that run as political figures, turn into media, and then pretend like they're being fair and objective. Now, watch what I think is going to happen here if we continue to have a coalition government. See, this is a member in the USA. His name is Madison Cawthorn, and what happened to him, I think, could happen here. Listen to this story. This is going to blow you away.
New York, I'm Chris Hayes. You know, right-wing Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn of North Carolina has been in a bit of trouble lately. He's been making headlines all over the place and seems to have enemies everywhere he looks, including a significant portion of Republicans and conservatives who have it out for him. Now, at first blush, that does not make a whole lot of sense. Madison Cawthorn is a rising star in the party. But we're going to explain why this is happening and what it says about what kind of behavior Republicans will and will not patrol, what they will and will not go after.
See, I don't know if many of you know, but they bought into the big lie of, you know, that Biden stole the election and whatever, and the Republicans were all in, right? There is a line of what they will accept. They accepted every lie Trump told, but listen to the lies that they will listen to the things that they will not accept that be told.
What they will and will not abide. Because Madison Cawthorn is a perfect illustration of where their red line actually is. Ever since Donald Trump came down the golden escalator at Trump Tower in 2015 announcing his bid for the presidency, it's been this kind of floating unanswered question. Under what circumstances will Republicans truly unite against one of their own? How far is too far? Just this month, Senator Mitch McConnell refused to say where he draws the line. That comes after he called Donald Trump morally responsible for the insurrection, but still says he would support the ex-president in another run for the White House.
These $60 Japanese smart patches are taking the world by storm. Just apply.
So moral red lines, where do you draw them?
I'm perfectly comfortable with the way I have conducted my political career, and I'd be happy to respond to any specificity you want to apply to the term. What was it?
Moral red lines.
Moral red line. Yeah.
Well, let me give
So
you.
Mitch McConnell is one of the most deplorable senators ever in history. He has appointed many judges that are unqualified for it. He is for big money, big business, big corporations, and he has set up the country for what I can only put out there as an unjust system. And that's where Mitch McConnell comes in. But Madison Cawthorn seems to have interfered with Mitch McConnell's plan for the Republican Party. What does this have to do with Australia? Well, I think our Australian counterparts are doing much
Very
the same
comfortable
thing.
with my moral red line.
The vast majority of Republicans joined McConnell in standing by Trump after he incited the deadly insurrection, an attempt on the lifeblood of American democracy. And most of them have stood by and said nothing as members of their party speak at the conferences of avowed white nationalists and Holocaust deniers. And as this kind of atrocious behavior happens more and more often, it feels baffling, frustrating. Why can't they do anything? Well, in some cases, they can. Just ask our buddy Madison Cawthorn. Now, the 26-year-old was elected in 2020, winning the seat that Mark Meadows actually vacated when he became Donald Trump's chief of staff. And it was an upset after both Trump and Meadows endorsed Cawthorn's opponent.
Okay, it's an important caveat to say that Madison Cawthorn has also lied about why he's in that wheelchair. And that didn't seem to be a red line for him, but watch what is.
But Cawthorn quickly and successfully became a MAGA darling, joining the cohort of outrageous far-right House members that now includes Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia and Matt Gaetz of Florida and Paul Gosar of Arizona. Now suddenly he's in a lot of hot water, and the calls are clearly coming from inside the House. It began about a week ago when Politico published these photos that appear to show Cawthorn wearing women's lingerie at a party, which they say were provided, quote, by a person formerly close to Cawthorn and his campaign. Cawthorn did confirm their veracity in a tweet that blamed his liberal opponents, which seems unlikely. Quote, I guess the left thinks goofy vacation photos during a game on a cruise taken way before I ran for Congress is somehow going to hurt me. I don't speak for the left, but I don't think it came from the left, and I don't really care about the photos. A few days later, this article appeared in the conservative magazine, The Washington Examiner, detailing an allegation from multiple watchdog groups that Cawthorn may have violated federal insider trading laws. The accusation, and you're really not going to believe it until you hear it, it centers around the Let's Go Brandon cryptocurrency, a meme coin set.
The Let's Go Brandon is another way to say fuck you, fuck off Joe Biden. That's basically what it is, because they can't say those words, because they're Republicans. They're classy. No, they're not. They're idiots. And they don't actually know how to say what they're saying. So they created a weak cryptocurrency involving
set up
that.
in the wake of the chant mocking President Joe Biden, of course. Last December, Cawthorn appeared in this Instagram photo posted by the creator of the coin and commented, quote, LGB legends, tomorrow we go to the moon. The next day, LGB coin did exactly as the lawmaker predicted, spiking 75% after a NASCAR driver announced it would be the primary sponsor of his 2022 season. The watchdog groups allege the evidence suggests that Cawthorn may have advanced non-public knowledge of the deal and warrants an investigation from the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission. In the wake of those accusations, North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis, he's upset. He's disturbed. He thinks there's stuff to respond here. He spoke out against his counterpart in the House, saying Cawthorn, quote, owes North Carolinians an explanation. He also called for an inquiry by the House Ethics Committee.
This is what you call knifing your opponent. But watch what they get him for. This is what I think our Liberal Party would totally do. Watch what they get him for.
Oh, but that wasn't all. On Wednesday, an anti-Cawthorn political action committee requested the Office of Congressional Ethics investigate the congressman for multiple alleged violations of House rules, 3 of which are related to gifts and loans they say Cawthorn gave a member of his staff named Stephen Smith. Then yesterday, the Daily Mail published several of the salacious exhibits included in that request. Now, just to be clear, the Daily Mail is a British tabloid that runs all sorts of gossip. This is a recent piece on Tiger King star Joe Exotic, to give you an idea of the sort of standard we're dealing with here. What they published about Madison Cawthorn is obviously ultimately part of this campaign to destroy him. They echo the salacious accusations made in that ethics complaint that Cawthorn is engaged in an improper relationship with Smith, his senior aide. They published a video which purports to show Smith touching the U.S. Congressman inappropriately, as well as some of their Venmo payment history from June 2018, which they describe as being littered with suggestive messages. Now, again, just to be really clear, none of this is confirmed. We haven't independently verified it. And again, on the Daily Mail stuff, I have no idea about the context of messages or the video, if they're real or they're like ironic in kind of a dumb and childish way. Honestly, I could not possibly.
Now, see, this part's important because he's really building up to how they do it. What if they were going to turn against Trump? This is how they would have done it. If they had a problem with him attacking democracy.
Really care less. But the point of them all, obviously, is to tank Madison Cawthorn's prospects in his conservative Southern District. Now, instead of denying these wild accusations, Cawthorn released a video blaming rhinos, but never really denying any of the allegations.
We have the North Carolina political establishment and one rhino senator who have really targeted me are coming hard. They're putting hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars to be able to defeat me. And they're starting to say just these...
See, this is how our Liberal Party behave too. When they want someone gone, this is how they do it. But it's not for the normal thing. This is because he went against some pretty hard-hitting people.
Ridiculous, salacious lies. I hear from my supporters all the time. I just got this call of people polling. They said that you want to raise our tax dollars, which is absurd. I want to remove the federal income tax. That I want to cut Social Security spending when that is the exact opposite of what I want to do.
Fun fact, Madison Cawthorn, you can't have it both. You can't have lower taxes and then a Social Security benefit scheme.
Trying to see this coordinated drip campaign. When I say a drip campaign, it's where they're going to drop an attack article every 1 or 2 days just to try and kill us with a death by 1,000 cuts. And that is really their main strategy.
Again, there's a broad sort of buffet of accusations here. I don't know if they're true. Some of them seem to be like worth investigation. Some of them seem kind of ridiculous. But it's clear they're part of a full-scale attack. This is a barrage, like Cawthorn described, where they, certain forces that are opposed to him on the right in the Republican Party, are just throwing everything they can at him. Now, Madison Cawthorn has made it easy for them. But why have they chosen Madison Cawthorn as their target? Like, what did Madison Cawthorn do to deserve this treatment? He did support the Trump coup, but that, of course, wasn't it. They don't punish people for that. There was, however, his comment about Republican Coke orgies.
Look at all these people. A lot of them that I've looked up to through my life. I've always paid attention to politics, guys. That then all of a sudden you get invited to like, well, hey, we're going to have kind of a sexual get together at one of our homes. You should come. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. If you don't know, Matt Gaetz is under investigation for this sort of thing. So this kind of double does what Matt Gaetz is under investigation for, much like our Liberal Party with the prayer room, right? That's why I linked this. Much like our Liberal Party with the prayer room, they're making the same claims about the Republican Party. Now, the moral party, the ones that say that they're all about family values, happen to have these coke parties with prostitutes coming to their venues. So the Republican Party in America have this going on. And openly now it's being said by their own party. That's their red line. So I'd imagine our Liberal Party has the same stink on it. So if anyone comes out, they're not going to worry if you attack democracy or anything big. No. The red line is you admit to the sex party, you're out on your rear. That, my friends, is ultimate moment of watching the world crumble around them. They don't care if you attack democracy. They don't care if you make lives of your voters worse off. No. You tell about, you go against our family values speech and you tell them what we really are doing, you're gone, buddy. That's why this is interesting. This is gonna be how our Liberal Party handle it. They're gonna do the same thing. If one more person, say, has a story about that prayer room and they're an own side lot, notice how quick, when Senator Fierravanti-Wells, when she came out with her thing, how they were drip feeding stories about how terrible she is. See, same playbook. The non-family values party, now let's call it what it is. These Conservatives are never for families. They're not even for democracy. But tell one of their tales and you're out on your
What
ass.
did you just ask me to come to? And then you realize they're asking you to come to an orgy. Or the fact that, there's some of the people that are leading on the movement to try and remove, addiction in our country. And then you watch them do, a key bump of cocaine right in front of you.
There's a wild new hair growth method that works incredibly well, and now the world is...
Now, in the Republican Party, it is one thing to talk about how the libs are degenerates, worshiping Satan, grooming children, and pizza...
Yeah, I mean, they could make up any ridiculous claim about the left. Anything they wanted to. That's what makes this so beautiful. Here's what they do, right? They make any wild allegation and they say, the left is really after you. Well, the conservative movement is this grotesque thing that feeds off feeding big corporations, kills off the poor, has coke parties with prostitutes, and then says, hey, I'm a family man. No, don't buy it. And they're all the frickin' same.
Shop basements. That's fine. It's a whole other thing to suggest that your fellow Republicans are doing the things that Cawthorn alleged there. Key bumps of cocaine, I think was the term. They were very upset about that interview to the podcast. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy told Cawthorn he, quote, lost his trust in him, which is very serious. That's something he never said to, say, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, even after she spoke at the podium next to a white nationalist Holocaust denier. And Senator Tom Tillis even endorsed Cawthorn's opponent, saying Cawthorn had fallen well short of the most basic standards Western North Carolina expects from the representatives. Man, I mean...
Now, remember that they still backed 2 Republicans that were done for insider trading. Weird, right? They were like, insider trading, schmading. They were cool with that. They were cool with the attacks on democracy. They were cool to say that the left were Satan eating baby faces, in basements. You tell a story like this, oh no. This is how Rupert Murdoch operates. This is how they do it. See, the Daily Mail had a major role in attacking Madison Cawthorn. You know what? If the wolves want to eat their other wolves, I'm good with that. But I have a problem with how they go about this. This is deplorable.
Okay, I guess they didn't like the key bumps at the coke orgies. Fine. There's another major factor at play here too. As Charlie Pierce describes it in Esquire, Cawthorn picked a fight with a Koch brother mini-me. That Koch brother mini-me would be Art Pope, the multimillionaire who's a right-wing force in the state and bankrolled the Republican takeover of the North Carolina state legislature.
Right,
Quote,
and if you don't know, you can't go against big business if you're a conservative, because you're all about not taxing them. Like how Scott Morrison just said that he would never make multinationals pay their fair share. That thing. See, it kind of writes itself, this stuff. As we're nearing this election cycle, I want to show you that there is no difference to the seedy, grotesque, underhanded, disgusting Republican Party to our own Liberal Party. Just there isn't. See, the prayer room story is sort of doing the rounds at the same time as this. And if you think that's gross, check out what's happening with Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz is openly under investigation for possibly hiring underage females for sexual favours. See, Murdoch didn't have an issue with that. Rupert Murdoch drew the line at someone telling the story. Madison Cawthorn told the story. See, it all goes full circle. Conservatives don't care about democracy or even how the voters are treated. They just care if Rupert Murdoch gets his special picks. Rupert Murdoch is pissed about this.
Cross Art Pope is a Republican in North Carolina, and you have the political half-life of a dead vice president. And Cawthorn clearly crossed him, to be clear, when he decided to run in the newly redrawn 13th district, which had been tailor-made for the Republican Speaker of the North Carolina House. As Pierce puts it, Cawthorn meddled the primal forces of nature, and he will atone. So yes, there are lines you cannot cross in the Republican Party. The story of Madison Cawthorn shows that you cannot go up against the wrong-rich megadonor with a right-wing agenda he needs to implement and favors he needs to dole out to politicians who carry his water. You cannot openly question the moral degeneracy of your Republican colleagues. You can, however, support the overturning of American democracy, the installation of a dictator against the will of the people, and for that, you won't get in any trouble. As others have pointed out, what is happening to Madison Cawthorn is kind of what it would look like if Republicans, say, really turned on Donald Trump after he incited an insurrection, or even if they decided to hold Marjorie Taylor Greene or Paul Gosar accountable for their actions. But of course, they have not. I suppose it's some combination of the fact they're scared, they don't actually care about the infractions. And that's the thing, right? They don't care about democracy, about whether this system endures, the will of the people. They care about, their personal reputations for being non-coke orgy attenders and maintaining their hold on power. And Madison Cawthorn has threatened that.
Now, did you hear that? Madison Cawthorn attacked them holding on to power by keeping the Koch brothers happy. See, now that's why I don't think our Liberal Party is much different. They're having issues in Parliament House, in their weird prayer room where they're not actually praying. They're hiring sex workers. And they're having coke parties. I mean, here's the thing. This is why I'm telling you that these family values people for law and order are far from it. You have the AFP doing, hatchet jobs on Brittany Higgins. You've got this fixated persons unit going after Friendly Geordie's staff. None of that is law and order. Let's get a smidgen more perspective on what that means. This means this political cycle, you have a difference between a highly corrupt Liberal government that will not implement an ICAC. That means that they do not want an overseer of corruption. Much like the Republican Party in the United States, they do these grotesque things, and the moment you start saying, wow, that contradicts their family values speech. Do you know, I can't remember her name, it will come to me. She was a John McCain's understudy. I'll look that up. It'll occur to me. Sarah Palin. So Sarah Palin had a daughter. Now, she was running for the whole family values thing. Nothing wrong with that. Do you know, it wasn't how crazy she was acting. When Sarah Palin in the United States is acting crazy, they were all for it. In fact, she was the Trump before Trump. That's not what killed Sarah Palin's career. What killed Sarah Palin's career is her minor daughter ending up unmarried and pregnant in a highly conservative seat. That's what costed her. The moment you break the facade of this imagery of what they create as family values, it doesn't matter whether you actually portray family values. It doesn't matter if you're the likes of Matt Gaetz, that is under investigation for possible child trafficking. It doesn't matter if you're in a prayer room and you've hired escorts and there is drugs everywhere. These conservatives are all the same. They don't have a value system that I can look at and say, hey, yeah, that policy works. I mean, the only one time I agreed with a policy, and that was John Howard's, to buy back the guns. One. They found one where I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, sounds reasonable. But by and large, these parties are hateful. They're not screaming family values because they believe in families. No. They're screaming family values because they don't want things to change. They don't want things to get better. They want to demonize you for being gay or transgender or whatever you want to be. See, family values only matter if you can attack someone for not being in their square box of a family value. That's what makes the Liberal Party so deplorable. Their bigot bill is a sign where they can openly discriminate against people in that fashion. And when they do it, they don't have to care about the facts around it. They don't have to care about whether someone is actually a family person. And that's part of why I'm voting for Labor. They're going to care if corruption exists. Labor is going to say, hey, no. I don't want you to just look into if there's corruption now. I want you to look at if there was corruption in the previous government. And that has Scott Morrison scared. See, now, if you were a decent party, you'd be like, hey, have a look at us. You know what Scott Morrison called a integrity commission? A kangaroo court. But at every other moment, he can't help but mention Eddie Obeid and Christina Keneally. So in one sense, he will use the fact that Christina Keneally dobbed in Eddie Obeid for corruption. And said, look at how corrupt the Labor Party is. Look, ICAC found them. And we're like, yeah, it worked really well. How effective is ICAC? It actually got Eddie Obeid in trouble as he should have been. And Labor's like, hey, yeah, no matter which side of politics you stand, I want to see that if there's a corrupt person, get him out. And Scott Morrison's like, yes, Eddie Obeid, how bad was he? And then the moment you ask him to implement an ICAC for his party, he's like, nope, they're a kangaroo court. See, that looks shady to me. That looks so dodgy. How can he look voters in the face and then say, yeah, what happened to Eddie Obeid is awesome. And there should be more of it. And you're like, okay, let's implement it on a federal level. Nope. Why would you do that? See, it looks bad because it really is bad. And I think that it's clear of where this is. But here's where my biggest issue is. Listen to this from Scott Morrison as we're a few minutes off from, hold on. As we're getting to this point, listen to this, okay? Now, this is a real press conference Scott Morrison did. Now, he promised people that when the economy was great And he's claimed that the economy is great, and he's been claiming it for years that the economy is fine. Despite a quadrupling the debt since Labor was in office, he's been running around telling people the economy is fantastic. Listen to this little liar bird of a moment.
The Labor Party runs around saying they can put up your wage. They can't do that. I'll tell you who can put up your wage. The business you work for. Your employer.
Yeah. If the government legislates that they need to up wages. You know, like penalty rates. You know, the thing that you attacked? It's a little bit weird when you get caught, isn't it, Mr. Morrison? See, now it's embarrassing. See, he embarrassed himself in less than 0.5 of a second. That's sad.
Can do that. And your employer can only do that if they're running a business in a strong economy.
Yeah, the strong economy. See, he's saying that only the boss can up your wages. Not true. If the government mandates how much your business has to pay in wages for that employee, yeah. And best part, if you keep penalty rates, that'll increase their hip pocket wages. That's how it works. Weird, right, Scott Morrison? Oh, and strong economy. I thought it was strong. Now it isn't because people are asking for their wages to be risen. Weird.
And if they're not in a strong economy, then they can't. The Labor Party runs around saying they can put up your wage. They can't do that. I'll tell you who can put up your wage. The business you work for. Your employer can do that. And your employer can only do that if they're running a business in a strong economy. And if they're not in a strong economy, then they can't. Labor...
Yeah, see, Scott Morrison just lied himself into a corner. So is the economy strong or not? Can you, by keeping penalty rates and all of that stuff on the table and legislate that wages rise, see, government can fix wages. He lied on multiple levels here. But this is how they operate. Now he's admitting the economy isn't strong. 20 days from an election. You heard that right. He's telling you the economy is bad. But don't take my word for it. Listen to theirs. They openly now admit that the economy is not as good as what they were perceiving it to be. Why would somebody do that? Little weird, right? This is my problem with the whole premise of the Liberal Party. Their idea that they're the only ones that can manage the economy. Okay, you had 10 years to run the economy. How come it's not strong then? And how come you can't raise wages? See, 20 days. And you can't even tell us that there's a strong economy. I don't understand how people buy into this. 1 minute the economy is the best economy in the world and only a Liberal government can deliver it. Want wages to rise? Oh no, it's not a strong economy. Why would you think that? See, it becomes a big problem. Scott Morrison's lies are just another moment where he can't be honest about anything. Why? I don't know. But you have 20 days to make sure he doesn't get another run at doing that. You have 20 days to tell that man all of his lies and all of the things that he's done, you're done listening to. This was no small lie that he told. He told a lie of monumental level. He kept telling everyone how great he was at the economy. But the moment you say, hey, how about you up my pay break then since the economy is so good? Oh, no. Why would you suggest that the economy is good? I don't know, because you kept repeating the economy was good. Weird. I'm so over it. And in 20 days, I need you to have those awkward conversations with people telling them that's not acceptable. But, I mean, it's now up to the voters. And I want you to know that I enjoy being with you every Sunday night. And I want to thank you for tuning in, and all the people that watch the playback and everything else. I hope you have just as fun on the show as what I do. I enjoy bringing you content that you enjoy. Make sure that you leave a like, share, and make sure people view the content. For this to be sustainable, I do need more people to view. For this to continue after the election, I will be deciding after the election whether this is really having the reach I need. Thank you for a wonderful show. See you next Sunday with even less time to go. Thank you guys. Enjoy your week. Have a glass of wine for me. Night.